Bueno, señores, una vez más comprobamos que hay tres tipos de personas en el gobierno de Donald Trump. Están los delincuentes, los estafadores y los que son ambas cosas. Lo más impresionante es que, claro, Trump lidera con el ejemplo, pero no está solo. Hasta personas como Caroline Leavitt, su actual secretaria de prensa, también ha convertido su paso por la política en una fuente interminable de engaños, favores ilegales y, por supuesto, dinero sucio. Y hoy por hoy está saliendo todo a la luz. Todo le está explotando en la cara. Acaba de salir un informe, el cual podría convertirse en una auténtica bomba legal contra Caroline Leavitt. Antes de que nos metamos de lleno en lo que ahora es su pasado criminal, hay algo que tenemos que entender, y es el tipo de gobierno que Donald Trump está tratando de construir. Tanto él como sus portavoces viven de la mentira. Y la mentira más peligrosa, que es la que repiten todos los días, es la idea de que el ejército estadounidense le pertenece personalmente a Trump, como si fuera su guardia privada. Caroline Leavitt, por ejemplo, acaba de decir esto en una entrevista reciente, hablando de una supuesta solución creativa, que en realidad solo escucharlo ya da miedo. Veamos.
It's delayed and canceled. Air traffic controllers, TSA agents continue to work without pay. The president tapped into tariff revenue to keep WIC money for women and infants and children going out the door. The president found a creative solution to keep the troops paid. And rather than congratulate the president for doing that, this unprecedented action to get our troops paid, the Democrats want to sue him for it. They're saying that it's illegal. This just shows they don't care about the people who are hurting. They are shutting down the government purely for partisan politics because they don't like Donald Trump.
Así es, amigos. Está hablando de un ciudadano privado financiando al ejército. Como si Trump pudiera literalmente comprar a las Fuerzas Armadas para utilizarla a su gusto. O sea, es la locura autoritaria que Caroline Leavitt está ayudando a vender. La idea de que el ejército no pertenece al país, sino que le pertenece a Donald Trump. Mientras tanto, la realidad es que él mismo provocó este cierre de gobierno. Un cierre de gobierno que está dejando familias enteras sin asistencia ni alimentos. Hay filas de gente buscando comida en bancos de alimentos. Y todo esto mientras Trump y su gente se autoproclaman los genios por encontrar soluciones. ¿Por qué no, amigos? Para empezar, no solucionó nada. Es más, él causó el problema. Pero la mentira sirve para tapar algo mucho más grave, y es la corrupción interna de su equipo. Vean esto.
The New York Times reported that the private donor who gave President Trump $130 million to pay U.S. troops during the shutdown, that he is billionaire Timothy Mellon. And the donation appears to violate federal law. But what do you say to Americans who look at that and think it's President Trump, not Democrats, making sure that troops get paid?
Well, I think one of the reasons that President Trump is refusing to negotiate is because he likes the fact that the government is closed, because he thinks he can exercise king-like powers. He can open up the parts of the government that he wants. He can pay the employees who are loyal to him. I mean, this is a leader who is trying to transition our government from a democracy to something much closer to a totalitarian state. And so this is part of what happens in totalitarian states. The leader, the regime only decides what things get funded and what don't, often in coordination with their oligarch friends. So I just don't want to live in a world in which Donald Trump and a handful of billionaires decide which part of government works and which don't.
Donald Trump quiere cambiar por completo la percepción que tenemos del ejército. Ya no quiere que la gente vea a las Fuerzas Armadas como los defensores del pueblo, sino como un brazo político en su movimiento MAGA. Y mientras promueve esta idea, Caroline Leavitt está metida en un escándalo financiero enorme. Acaba de salir este reporte que revela que su campaña al Congreso, antes de trabajar en la Casa Blanca, debe más de $326,000, incluyendo $210,000 en donaciones ilegales que nunca devolvió. Así es, señores, Escucharon bien, donaciones ilegales. Su campaña recibió dinero en exceso, y esto pues es una violación a las reglas de financiación, y nunca lo reportó, hasta hace muy poco. La Comisión Federal Electoral todavía no ha actuado. Ahora muchos se preguntan, ¿por qué? Porque amigos, adivinen, Donald Trump bloqueó las nominaciones para que esta Comisión Federal Electoral ya no pueda operar, así de simple. O sea, la agencia que podría investigar a su secretaria de prensa está paralizada, y por orden del propio Trump. No solo eso, porque la campaña de Leave It también le debe decenas de miles a empresas de consultoría y de publicidad. O sea, en otras palabras, amigos, es una estafadora política. Una mujer que usó su campaña como una caja personal. Pero claro, pues en el gobierno del trumpismo eso no es un defecto, eso es un requisito. Mientras Caroline Leavitt se enriqueció y no para de mentir, millones de estadounidenses pasando hambre. 40 millones de personas que podrían perder sus beneficios de alimentos porque Trump simplemente se niega a negociar con los demócratas. ¿Cuál es su nueva prioridad? Construir un nuevo salón dorado en la Casa Blanca, el famoso Ballroom, valorado en millones. Ese es el verdadero símbolo del trumpismo. Hambre para el pueblo, lujo para el dictador. El senador Rubén Gallego dijo algo brillante sobre eso hace poco, y quiero que lo vean porque resume perfectamente el nivel de locura que se está viviendo en Estados Unidos.
Quote, I will repeat this every single day for the next 3 years. Any Democrat running for president in 2028 must pledge to immediately tear down, bulldoze, demolish Trump's ballroom and fully restore the East Wing. Is that overstated, or would you agree with that any Democrat who becomes the next president, if and when that were to happen, they should tear down whatever changes Trump makes?
No, I think to really mess with him, just name it the Barack Obama ballroom, and I think that will take care of half the problem.
So don't tear it down. Don't
more
make your
importantly,
changes.
This is a distraction. First of all, he should not have done that. It's the people's house. Number two, where is the president? He's focusing on the ballroom. He's focused on everything, but he's not focused on what's happening right now. Inflation's still high. People can buy what they need to buy. Energy's still high. We have tariff wars that are being caused because he feels icky and feels bad about someone talking bad about him in a commercial. And inflation is about to double for 24 million Americans, and that's what he cares about. This is Marie Antoinette talking about let them eat cake while Americans are struggling right now. So what I would like for him to do is to focus on this to make sure that we can actually get costs down. People can actually make, a good standard of living right now and be able to pay what they need to survive instead of him focusing on all these little projects which aren't really bringing anything to help everyday Americans.
Claro que tienes razón, porque si algún día si se reconstruye ese salón, debería de llevar en realidad el nombre de Obama, solo para recordarle al país que el fascismo no se derrota con buenas maneras, sino con firmeza. Porque mientras los republicanos van a seguir protegiendo a Trump, los demócratas van a tener que prepararse para pelear de verdad. Como lo dijo el congresista Eric Swalwell, abogados que estén listos, documentos que estén guardados. Y señores, se preparan para la guerra legal. No por venganza, sino para poder salvar la democracia de una estructura de corrupción, una que está destruyendo a Estados Unidos. Mientras la manipulación mediática sigue creciendo, hemos visto cómo las cadenas de televisión comienzan a cambiar la narrativa. Están suavizando lo que hace Trump. Y por eso quiero que vean este último fragmento, porque muestra cómo es que los medios ahora están comenzando a normalizar la locura trumpista.
I want to ask you about something you said. You said Democrats, there are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You said that back in January. But recently, you've been using the term rigged elections in reference to the upcoming midterms. Democrats were appalled when President Trump used language like that. How do you justify using that now? Doesn't that undermine faith for voters you need to show up?
No, I've been using that term in the context of Donald Trump's unprecedented effort to gerrymander congressional maps in a partisan fashion all across the country.
Pues bueno amigos, lo que estamos viendo no solo es corrupción, esto es un intento sistemático de romper la idea de que el gobierno pertenece al pueblo. Bueno, pues Trump quiere que tú creas que todo el ejército, que la justicia, que los medios le pertenecen a él. Pero no, señores, eso le pertenece a Estados Unidos. Ahora bien, amigos, no podía faltar este tema el día de hoy. Tenemos que hablarlo porque es algo nuevo, acaba de pasar hace unas horas. Una jueza federal le acaba de dar una lección al alto mando de la patrulla fronteriza. Y créanme, amigos, van a entender por qué es que se dio todo esto en un momento. La humillación fue tan grande que ni los abogados de Trump pudieron justificar lo que pasó. Se trata exactamente, y seguro ya han visto algún que otro clip o algún tipo de post sobre el comandante Gregory Bovino. Es uno de los jefes más altos de la patrulla fronteriza. Y bueno, pues, este señor tuvo que presentarse ante una jueza en Chicago, luego de que múltiples denuncias y videos hayan revelado abusos brutales de agentes de inmigración en contra de manifestantes, en contra de periodistas, e incluso familias con niños. Y claro, todo esto bajo la dirección de funcionarios designados por Donald Trump. Veamos de qué se trata.
The cruelty, the violence, the impunity with which they act, practically every defining feature of the second Trump administration and the efforts to hold Team Trump accountable collided in a Chicago courtroom today. A federal judge sharply questioning top Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino over brutal tactics federal agents have used against protesters and journalists in Chicago, especially in the wake of her order that puts limits on the use of tear gas by immigration authorities. The Chicago Sun-Times reporting that Judge Sarah Ellis told Bovino, quote, "It is difficult for me to see that the force being used is necessary to stop an immediate and serious threat of physical harm to a person." At times, Judge Ellis was sharply critical about how Bovino handled incidents between residents and federal agents. Ellis saying, quote, "That was the instance as well where children were present and they were dressed up in their Halloween costumes. Those kids were tear-gassed on their way to celebrate Halloween in their local school parking lot. These kids, you can imagine their sense of safety was shattered on Saturday, and it's going to take a long time for that to come back, if ever." Residents, journalists, and protesters laid out multiple alarming incidents by federal agents. Enrique Bahena submitted to the court this picture after he was shot by a pepper ball from just 5 feet away. He says he was on his way to work when he witnessed federal officers holding guns and advancing on a crowd. Combat veteran Chris Gentry says that, quote, "As agents were driving away, they pointed a pepper ball gun and then a real gun as he was lawfully standing on the side of the road, voicing his opposition as agents were driving by in their vehicles. The agent who pointed the real gun at Mr. Gentry's face said, 'Bang, bang,' and 'You're dead, liberal.' That just a portion of the allegations that federal officers are facing in Chicago. When questioned about specific incidents, Bovino dodged, saying, quote, "I believe that each situation is dependent on the situation." The judge then ordering Bovino to appear in court every day at 6 p.m. to face questions from the judge. A federal judge pushing back against overreach by the Trump administration is where we start today. Joining me now, Director of Communications and Public Policy for ACLU of Illinois, Adyanka, is here. Also with us, Vice President for Immigration Policy and Campaigns at Forward.us, Andrea Flores, plus MSNBC senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin is here. All right, Lisa, walk us through what happened today in court.
So, Alicia, Gregory Bovino, before he even got to talk, had to listen to Judge Sarah Ellis, make sure that they were on the same page about what her temporary restraining order required. She read it thoroughly to make sure that it wasn't just a question of willful disobedience of the temporary restraining order or not understanding or reading it, but that she and Bovino both had the same baseline understanding of what she had ordered. And then she went through with him some of the evidence that the plaintiffs had presented, some of which you already referred to, declarations by people in the neighborhood, declarations by people who were there to protest and saw and or experienced deadly force being pointed at them or pepper balls being aimed at them. You showed that picture of Enrique Bahena with the pepper ball welt in his neck. And she asked him a series of questions about whether certain instances would violate the TRO. he generally did not give much ground. And I want to read to you from the transcript if I can. She was talking about some guy, this is Judge Sarah Ellis, some guy standing on the street in front of his house or next to his car, most of the time, absent something unusual, is not presenting such a risk, meaning a risk of force being used against law enforcement officers that puts them in imminent danger, such that deadly force is appropriate if he's just standing next to his car. Bovino's response is, well, yes, ma'am, Your Honor. Again, that would be situationally dependent. I would have to understand what that individual was doing or what was happening before I could make a definitive assessment on how I would respond to a situation like that. So Gregory Bovino really not giving up much in terms of, are there situations where under no circumstances would it be appropriate to use deadly force, much less tear gas? But as you also noted, Gregory Bovino has to show up each workday between now and the November 5th preliminary injunction hearing. That's where the plaintiffs in this case will ask Judge Ellis to enter a much longer-term order that would prohibit some of the use of force that they have contested thus far. Not only the use of chemical munitions, but, for example, putting people in chokeholds, or the way in which they disperse crowds without warnings, whether or not they can show up without clearly identifiable markers for individual law enforcement officers. One of the complaints has been, we don't even know who these people are. We can't tell what agency they're with, much less what their name is. And so Judge Ellis reiterating today that they must wear in a conspicuous place at least 2 identifying markers. And then, of course, she extracted one important concession from Bovino, which is that despite her order that all of the CBP and ICE officers on the ground need to be wearing body cams, that he himself, despite being a part of the action, was not wearing one, but that he will do so by Friday, Alicia.
Andrea, let's pick up on that point, Bovino not wearing a body camera. Does that strike you as unusual?
It doesn't, because we're talking about the Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection, and these officers are trained for a different mission than what we're seeing in Chicago. They are supposed to be guarding our nation's boundaries. They're supposed to be dealing with, drug cartels and threats that are very, very different than what happens in our communities. So I am deeply alarmed by the growth and Border Patrol leadership taking over these operations in cities, because ICE is a deeply imperfect agency in need of reform, but they have a long history of working with local police departments. They work with local, non-governmental organizations. And so Border Patrol doesn't have those relationships, right? They were trained for a different mission, and they are essentially a paramilitary force meant to be at our borders, not in our communities.
Well, let's talk about that, because we have that reporting, Andrea, from MSNBC. You got field directors, special agents in charge in multiple cities expecting to be replaced by Border Patrol officials. So this is now becoming part of a larger pattern. Why do you believe that is happening, and what is it going to mean for American cities?
Well, I would say that there are more constraints generally that ICE is used to operating under, right? There's more checks and balances within ICE as an agency than there ever has been for Border Patrol. And we need to connect the dots of the announcements that they're making. So last week they said that they were going to have the Navy, they entered a contract with the Navy to build multiple soft-sided facilities, the type of detention facilities that we've seen in border areas during really, really big migration surges. Now they're going to be outside of our cities. And those are spaces that are operated by the Border Patrol. So they're really bringing these border tactics deep into our communities that are completely ill-equipped to serve any sort of public safety interest when it comes to civil immigration enforcement, right? What you need to combat someone, who is a human smuggler is very different than what you need for someone who has a basic civil immigration violation. But they are building an infrastructure to bring this untrained paramilitary force to do domestic policing on behalf of the president's goals.
I mean, listen, Ed, Judge Ellis is clearly doing what she can to hold the line inside her courtroom. I am curious about how that is translating on the streets of Chicago. I remember earlier this month you told Nicole ICE agents they were out of control in Chicago. Has anything changed on the ground since then?
No, and in fact, I think that's one of the reasons that Bovino was called into court today. You know, what we've seen over the last few days are, you know, heavy-handed tactics and, you know, violent activities on the part of ICE and CPB, not just in one part of the city, not just aimed at, you know, a particular group or particular part of the city, but in a variety of parts of the city. Again, always met with the same opposition, and then that opposition always bringing out these tactics of the use of tear gas, the use of threats, the use of physical violence when they found it necessary. You know, the fact is that you know, the Halloween party event that the judge made reference to this morning took place in a very quiet neighborhood in Chicago that, you know, was not really the target of these raids heretofore. It is clear that they are becoming both more aggressive and more expansive in terms of where they're going. And I think that what we see is a judge who's paying attention and wants to hear each and every day where, when, how, and why these raids are taking place, and to check and to be able to test whether or not the force that's being used is necessary.
The force that is being used necessary, and Lisa, at whose direction and in whose name? Court filings cite comments Bovino made to a reporter as evidence of his disregard for the law. Let's listen to them, and then we'll talk about them on the other side.
I take my orders from the executive branch, whether that's President Trump or Secretary Noem.
So one, Lisa, does that comport with your understanding of the law? Doesn't he still have an obligation to abide by the courts?
That's absolutely true. And Judge Ellis sort of subtly reminded him of that today. Alicia, at the beginning of the hearing, she said, as a member of the executive branch, you, Commander Bovino, have a different role to play than I do in the judicial branch. And then she continued, my role is not to tell you that you can or cannot enforce validly passed laws by Congress. That's not my role. I have no intention of doing that. But then she continued, my role is simply to see that in the enforcement of those laws, that you and the agents operating under you are acting in a manner that is consistent with your obligation under the law, meaning that it's consistent with the Constitution, it's consistent with federal law, it's consistent with the consent decree that's operating here, that it's consistent with the TRO that I entered. Again, Judge Sarah Ellis very subtly reminding him, you may take your orders from the executive branch, but at all times, the executive branch still has to be in compliance with the boundaries of the law as I interpret them as the district court judge in charge of this matter. And of course, we all owe fidelity to the Constitution. That's as true of me as the federal judge overseeing this and my oath as it is of you, Commander Bovino.
Pues bueno, lo que acabamos de ver y escuchar es el reflejo perfecto de cómo Trump transformó a las fuerzas de inmigración una vez más en un tipo de ejército político, ¿no? Su guardia personal. Este señor, Gregory Bovino, no fue capaz de admitir, ni por un segundo, que lanzar gas a niños disfrazados o apuntar armas en contra de civiles desarmados es un abuso. Su respuesta, la típica de un burócrata que está entrenado para obedecer sin pensar. Depende de la situación. Pero no, amigos, no depende. La ley es clara. Usar fuerza letal o agentes químicos en contra de personas que no representen una amenaza inmediata es algo ilegal, así de simple. Y lo más grave es que esta cultura de impunidad sabemos que viene directamente desde arriba. Donald Trump promueve esta narrativa de mano dura en contra de los inmigrantes, en contra de los manifestantes, y todo lo hace justificando cualquier exceso con el discurso del orden y de la seguridad. Pero lo que realmente vimos y lo que estamos viendo es un gobierno que está dispuesto a utilizar la violencia como una herramienta política. Esta jueza, que por cierto es la jueza Ellis, lo entendió perfectamente. Su orden de que este señor Gregory Bovino se presente todos los días en la corte es más que un castigo, es un mensaje. Le está diciendo al gobierno de Trump y a cualquiera que abuse del poder que en Estados Unidos aún hay jueces que no se van a arrodillar ante el trumpismo. Ahora bien, Algunos defensores de Trump dicen que los agentes solo cumplen órdenes y que estaban controlando disturbios, pero amigos, esa excusa ya a esta altura ya no sirve, ya no vale. Hay víctimas que son civiles, periodistas e incluso niños. Eso ya nos deja mucho más que solo seguridad nacional, eso se convierte en represión. Y si encima el comandante de la patrulla fronteriza no puede distinguir entre un narcotraficante y un niño en disfraz, entonces el problema no son los manifestantes. El problema es el sistema que tiene Trump. Este caso no es solo sobre este comandante reprendido, esto es una advertencia. Lo que podría volver a pasar si Trump vuelve a agitar todo este tema de la inmigración. Porque esto, señores, va a volver. Esto va a escalar. Y vamos a tener un gobierno donde los jueces, los pocos que quedan, van a tener que recordarle tanto a Trump como a los agentes federales que no están por encima de la ley, donde la violencia se normaliza, donde los derechos civiles se tratan como un obstáculo. La pregunta es, ¿qué tan lejos se está dispuesto a dejar que esto llegue? ¿Ustedes qué opinan? ¿Creen que esta jueza hizo lo correcto al enfrentarse al comandante de la patrulla fronteriza? ¿O piensan que el problema es mucho más profundo y bueno, empieza con la forma en la cual Trump está utilizando las agencias federales? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.